This is the balance sheet of the Bank of England, okay, in January 9th, 1924. Okay. The Bank of England is the central bank for Bagehot's day. And this isn't Bagehot's day, this is after it. But in fact, this division of the central bank into the issue department and the banking department is what Bagehot talks about when Peel's Act was 1844. That was Peel's Act that separated the Bank of England into an issue department and a banking department. The issue department, you can see, is where the notes are. Okay, so the central bank is issuing the banknotes, is issuing the currency of the economy. And mostly it's issued against gold coin and bullion, you can see there. There's a little bit amount of government debt there, the fiduciary issue, but mostly it's gold. Mostly it's gold. Okay? The issue department is under quite strict regulations that it can, on margin, it can only issue more notes if it gets more gold. And if foreigners come to you with notes and they say, I want gold, you have to pay them. Okay? So that's the central bank's sort of the issue department. That's why it's holding so much gold, okay? Because these notes are redeemable in gold when foreign central banks demand it. Now look at the banking department. That's what we're going to focus on now because it's not foreign exchange yet, okay? The banking department is holding some of these notes as a reserve, okay? The rest of the notes are out in circulation in other banks and in people's pockets, okay? It's also holding government securities and other securities. These other securities are things like discounts, okay? Discounts to firms and things like that. They're trade bills, various kinds, okay? And their liabilities are mostly deposits. You see, they're other deposits. The Bank of England was actually a bank. You could have a deposit. Firms could have deposits there, okay? Not like the Fed. You can't have a deposit. Only banks can have deposits at the Fed. But in the Bank of England days, firms and banks and lots of people could have deposits there at the Bank of England. Okay? So this is to remind you what the central bank looks like, that it's a bank. And it's a bank that is involved in the same bill market, okay, that this bank is. It's doing that. When I say banking department, I mean a department that does this stuff here. Unlike other banks, and Bagehot makes a big deal about that, you know, they hold quite a bit of notes there. Quite a bit of notes. I mean, is that a lot? Is that not very much? It's certainly not, you know, gold and silver coin. It's not way down to that, okay? But they hold notes. And they're in the discount business with the market, and they're in the rediscount business with other banks. Okay. The Bank of England quotes what it calls the bank rate. Bank rate is the rate at which, if you are a banker and you need to acquire notes, you can go to the Bank of England and acquire them. So there's a rediscount rate with other member banks, but there's also the central bank's rediscount rate, which is published. It's official bank rate. So another way of getting notes, of dealing with your cash flow problems, if you're a bank, is by borrowing at the central bank. In these years, the Bank of England is a private bank. So-called private bank. It's privately owned. And it's making money, and it is, you know, giving money to its shareholders and so forth. But it is also holding the reserve essentially for the entire banking system of Great Britain, which is also at the same time the reserve basically for the international money market. Okay, so it is the keeper of the reserve, and it will pay out notes just like this. Okay, it can also expand deposits just like this. It can't print notes. It can only print notes because if there's gold. So if the banking system as a whole needs liquidity, needs money, it goes to the Bank of England. And it discounts bills for notes, or in a real crisis, when the Bank of England runs out of notes, okay, it discounts bills for deposits. This is all very familiar. The Bank of England is doing the same thing relating to the banking system as every individual bank does in managing its own cash flow. You know, and you could describe it, it could be a profit maximizing entity. You could just say, I'm worried about my own cash flow and therefore I'm going to raise bank rate. I'm worried about my own cash flow, therefore I'm going to lower bank rate. You could do all of this. But what Bagehot says is the Bank of England, in fact, doesn't do this. It acts, because it is the lender of last resort for the system, it's the keeper of the reserve. In fact, the bank has public duties and it takes on those public duties, whether it admits it or not, whether it's brought it up to consciousness or not. And it does that by quoting bank rate like this. It says, here's the rate at which I will lend you money, all comers. You know, if the market rate gets to this level, everyone goes to the Bank of England. As long as the market rate is below this level, nobody goes to the Bank of England, right? You're trying to get the best rate you can and usually the market rate of interest is below bank rate. But when everyone is scrambling for cash, that pushes market rates up, and they scramble all the way in to the Bank of England, right here, okay? And then the Bank of England disgorges the notes that it's been holding, and it expands its own balance sheet by expanding deposits, and the member banks treat those deposits as if they were cash. That's the key. There's an economizing on notes so long as people are willing to treat deposits at the Bank of England as the same thing as notes. They're not the same thing as notes. Deposits are promises to pay notes. Notes are promises to pay gold.